Thank you. They are made in Afghanistan. Yes.
You don't say.
Shockingly. Do you have us in any order?
No, please. Well, I think who else? Any leave we need? Sorry. Don't wait for your name to be called. No idea. No, please.
Oh, here.
I have to take a picture of this panel.
All right. Now I need my seat.
So, we are going to be forcibly removed at 6 p.m. sharp. I want to say this is not my problem. No, it's not problem. Thank you. I don't think we'll need microphone. Thank you. I mean, there's no translation, and this. It's not the Stade de France.
Mike ने use किया था पढ़ाई नहीं करेगा। हाँ
Pardon? Are you? But I don't even think. Well, let's see. Philippe knows. Philippe knows best. Thank you very much. So this is really for the sake of the exercise. Who else? Is that any comment? Has anyone seen it? No, I asked actually earlier if anyone was. I haven't seen him. Yeah, I haven't seen him either. Let me just check quickly.
Thank you for coming.
Non, parce que quand j'ai posé la question, on m'a dit qu'il n'y avait pas de vidéo.
So maybe it's
Bastien, regarde, c'est un vidéo.
Quoi? Bah oui, mais ils m'ont dit, quand je leur ai demandé, ils m'ont dit. Voilà. No video.
It's like something that's half about
Shoshana.
Yes.
Waiting to hear. So we'll start without him, and thank you very much, everyone, for being here. We're going to conduct this discussion in English. That's okay for everyone. And the goal of this is to have a very loosely structured discussion among friends, really, about Afghanistan. So some of you have grabbed some tea and coffee, I think is appropriate. What we want to do is, there's already been a lot of discussion, and there's not much space for discussion between sessions. So I guess the point here is we need to use this as a way to discuss what's happening in Afghanistan with people who are actually working there. Have some exchange history of ALIPH. I'm looking forward to this exchange, trying to get more information about what we need to change, how we can adapt, both in terms of how funding is distributed, how Alexandra, Felicity, Deputy Director of the Turquoise Mountain in Afghanistan. So one good way to start this way is to go around the black table and have everyone introduce himself, herself, and then what they're currently doing, like what they're in Afghanistan, what they're currently doing in Afghanistan, and then we can start moving from that. And the idea is to have something that is quite fluid and also interactive, so we'll have much time for questions. Although as I said, we need to be out of here in 45 minutes. Although I don't know the consequences if you're not, but this is your job. It's probably on me, yeah. So I'll get fine. All right. So Shoshana, please, would you start?
Please, you want to say any first?
Very kind, thank you. Hello. Yeah, right.
I think we do need the mic to record.
Oh, very good.
I'm also just expecting much more.
Okay, hello, there we are. My name is Shoshana Stewart. I am the president of Turquoise Mountain. We are a cultural heritage organization. We were founded in Afghanistan, for Afghanistan. That has been our main project for our entire lives, for about 17 years. We now work in other countries also, in Jordan, in Myanmar, Saudi Arabia. In Afghanistan, we have about 220 staff. Felicity is with me. She's our deputy country director. The rest of our staff are Afghan, and only one of them has a foreign passport, so couldn't really join us today, unfortunately. So we have restored about 150 historic buildings in one old city neighborhood called Maiwandi in Kabul. And we have trained about 4,000 traditional builders and trained about 6,000 traditional artisans. So we have a school of traditional craft in the center of this neighborhood, in jewelry and gem cutting, calligraphy, miniature painting, woodwork, and ceramics. And then, we've talked about this earlier on in the day, the economic backbone behind these things. We export Afghan crafts, and we sell them inside of Afghanistan too, but that market is very, very low now. We export Afghan crafts to bring incomes, obviously, back into those families. So that is what we do, and we're hoping to start on a wonderful caravanserai in Bamiyan. We also work with carpet weavers across the country. That's us.
Thank you very much. My name is Ihsan Muni. Working for UNESCO Culture Unit in Kabul office. So we are implementing all the projects funded by ALIPH through UNESCO, STFA funded projects. In recently, Japanese will release their fund, and also Italian fund is already approved, but it is the administration process takes time. And we are looking for other donors. Potential donors in the future. Mr. Brendan was supposed to come and join this historical event, but due to some emergency in some outstanding activities in the office, he could not participate in this historical event. So poor Nui came to this forum. Particularly in terms of ALIPH funded, we are engaged with restoration and conservation work in Jam Minaret, and also major intervention through UNESCO is conducted in Bamiyan Valley. In some other activities, especially in traditional maintaining the traditional water management systems in north in southern Afghanistan. Meanwhile, some emergency repair work in Kandahar, Zabul, Ghazni, and Kabul in 4 provinces is in the pipeline that will be conducted very soon. The service completed recently. The design work is going on. So these are some of the activities I highlighted. I don't want to forget construction, in maintaining, in the management of BCC, Bamiyan Culture Center, which is maybe one of the, if it is not exaggerated, one of the fantastic building in that region, maybe in few countries around Afghanistan. So these are the highlights I presented here. It was real difficult to speak in front of our experienced elder, Mr. Maiwandi. Yeah, this is a, yeah, this is a, I feel a bit, yeah, I feel a bit impolite, but this is responsibility because I'm representing UNESCO. So please forgive me for that.
I think on that note, Ajmal should speak next.
I don't know what else to say other than this introduction. I think it says it all. But I am Ajmal Maiwandi. I manage the offices of the Aga Khan Trust for Culture in Afghanistan. The Aga Khan Trust for Culture, or Aga Khan Cultural Services Afghanistan as it's known, is part of a much wider network of development agencies working in Afghanistan as part of the Aga Khan Development Network, comprehensive across multiple regions of Afghanistan in health, education, economic development, work with communities. And our work is very much embedded in the global picture in Afghanistan. So that is one of the most important aspects of the work we do. Since 2002, active in multiple provinces of Afghanistan, working on major projects that have a real sense of importance for communities, projects where communities live, projects that communities have recreational activities, projects that communities have services. It's about people in Afghanistan. Conservation without people doesn't exist. And for that reason, our projects are very much embedded in these communities and to the benefit of them. And then by extension, tomorrow I'll be in the workshop on communities, and we'll talk about a much more holistic approach to communities. Yes, residents, but also professionals, also stakeholders, also civil society, also artists and art groups, everyone that has a stake in the conservation of sites, how they're used, how they're maintained, the economics that are generated around them. These become important factors when talking about working in Afghanistan.
Thank you. Philippe? Yes, I see it.
So I'm Philippe Marquis. I am director of the French Archaeological Delegation in Afghanistan, better known as DAFA, which means, I think that for a Chinese colleague, it's always very positive to be called DAFA. Well, I think that the meaning is very, very important. So we are not as numerous as my colleagues, but we have for ourselves 100 years of activities in Afghanistan because DAFA was created in 1922. What makes a difference also with our other colleague is that DAFA is really focused on archaeology. And, but as archaeologists, we have also to deal sometimes with restoration issue. But I would say that what we have all in common is first that we are very good friends and speaking as much as we can together. And there is, I would say, really a common sense to be a team working on the same topic. And also the same concern first about cultural heritage, but also about communities. And there is something which I didn't mention in the discussion. I want to say that this is making also ALIPH very special, and the collaboration with ALIPH and the other people very special, is that in 2020, in the summit of the COVID crisis, then we had a discussion with Valérie Fréland, and the discussion was how to help our Afghan colleagues in order to face the COVID, as nothing was really available in Afghanistan. So we had, I would say, a special grant, and I really thank ALIPH for this, in order to give equipment, protection, personal protection for our staff, but also for the staff of the Institute of Archaeology. So this is not a detail. I think it shows clearly that the interest is, as it had been said many times during the session, is that when cultural heritage suffers, people suffers. And when people suffer, cultural heritage may suffer. So we have to address also this concern. And our concern had been at a period which was very, very difficult, as you know, in summer 21, was to, I would say, to be as friendly as possible to our friends who were in difficult position and to help them and to provide them with secure shelter in any case. Even I would say it's something which is really a very delicate issue. And that's what we are still doing. So I think that for diplomatic reasons that you can easily understand, there is no diplomatic ties in between Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan and French Republic. We don't have, I would say, direct ties. So it means that we have to work through our network of friends and also to do as much as we can, I would say, remote activity. Remote activity as example, that will something we'll maybe we discuss further about, I would say, creating a watch on cultural heritage side and especially archaeological side. And then also to provide to those of our colleagues who are in France support in terms of training and so on, but also keep, I would say we still this year are going to have grants for Afghan students to go in France to study, I would say, all the training and in cultural heritage field. So that we are going on this, and I think that I think that's an important message I want first to say is that DAFA is old, but is alive, and is getting a lot from his experience, and this is something that we really want to share with our colleagues, because obviously the work to be done is to be done collectively and with as many partners and as many shareholders or any participants that we can imagine. So I leave the floor to
Thank you very much. I think what you meant is DAFA is experienced, probably, which it is. So we are still waiting for the video from, in a few minutes, from Dr. Khalili. I think for those of us who have been lucky enough to work in Afghanistan, what happened in the past few years has really highlighted the connection between cultural heritage and people and individuals and families. And I think this has brought quite a lot of us closer, beyond differences in organizations. I've seen everyone trying to find ways to make things happen on the ground, despite the challenges. And I think what would be interesting is to start maybe talking about, I mean, what has actually changed? What is the operational landscape in Afghanistan right now, and how do we get things done?
So specifically to your question, meaning since 15th of August 2021, I think the first and most important thing, there we are, a bit closer. First and most important thing is a restatement of the commitment to Afghanistan. That's very important. As cultural heritage professionals, as people that have worked in Afghanistan for a long time, is to make it very clear that while the politics of Afghanistan perhaps has changed, the people of Afghanistan, its cultural heritage, and the reasons why we work there, they remain the same. That hasn't changed. And so for us, as AKDN, as I mentioned before, but also as CSA or AKTC, within a day of Kabul's fall to the Taliban, His Highness the Aga Khan made a very clear statement. We continue in Afghanistan. We continue in Afghanistan for the people of Afghanistan, for their benefits, as we've done for the past 24 years, in fact. And for us, that decision, that guidance was critical. Also, from internally, within our own management systems, I think the commitment to Afghanistan was unprecedented in this particular situation. So, first and foremost, the decisiveness to say that we continue in Afghanistan, that's important. Beyond that, what it allows us to do is in very uncertain times and very difficult times, and times that people simply don't know what comes next, we're able to continue with the projects. We're able to continue employment. We're able to continue to retain staff, which we did for the most part. You mentioned that you have over 220 staff. At that moment, we had over 300 staff in Kabul only, and 1,800 laborers on different project sites. That's including the center of Kabul, the Mashinkhana project on the Bala Hisar, etc. So continuity over the initial 6 months for those groups was essential, important. The messaging that we remain in Afghanistan and we remain committed to the work that we do also enabled us to continue with our programs beyond that time frame. Yes, with much less resources available, without a doubt. It seems that cultural heritage perhaps wasn't as much of a priority after the 15th of August as it was before. And that's where ALIPH comes in, and ALIPH support for an area of conflict like Afghanistan. Again, beyond the politics, which is what we heard today, a bit earlier from Muhammad al-Mubarak, which is we are beyond politics. And so in times of conflict, it's groups of peoples, it's groups of individuals, experts, organizations that stand up for their mandates, stand up for their commitments, stand up for their ethos, what they believe in. That's when the test is. The test isn't when everything is well. The test is when things are not well. And we have to deal with that in areas of conflict. So programs continue. We continue to employ people. We continue to engage them and train them and have them work on sites and properties that are of value for them. That's a very important aspect of things, is clear messaging within the organization. Yes, the environment changes, the resources become less, we have different engagements and interactions with our interlocutors, their priorities change, we have to adjust to a whole new environment. But when the commitment is there and the focus is on engaging and being on the ground and remaining engaged, solutions present themselves.
In addition to Mr. Maiwandi, basically the change after 15th of August caused that new people come in power, in the directors, the minister, the deputy minister change. And the implies in lower level are still mostly the same. Maybe a few of them change, but mostly the same. In the past, maybe not wrong message, but based on their experience, the previous government, when they were doing any project or making an intervention in a site, they were also involving governmental employees. There was some technical support, financial support provided to line ministries, purchasing computers, vehicles, or funding their programs, events. So that message was passed. At the beginning, a lot of expectations were coming in. The expectations of relevant authorities were very high. So that was one of the difficult situations we experienced, and we said, look, we are not able even to communicate to you. What about you are asking for direct funding or something? They need some repairing work in their office or something. So one of the challenging job that was there, it is almost sorted out. Now they realize that, okay, there is strict restriction on direct funding or something. So we requested them that if you allow us, we are doing the intervention that you are supposed to do it as a government. These monuments mostly belong to you, except few that is registered in WC, World Heritage Center, and that is like world property. So we are helping you, just give us permission to go and intervene through local partners. But still, the problem is that most of the people, especially the skilled people who are expert in they were skilled laborers or technical people, engineers, archaeologists, most of them left the country. Especially in Bamiyan, we had ladies engineers working for our projects with our partners. They're not longer there. So now in this situation, we have to implement the projects and do, sorry, on the job training and capacity building of the skilled people living around the historical sites or the monuments. For example, in Jam, which is the best example in Afghanistan, and then in Bamiyan, and then in Ghazni, in Kandahar. So the critical point here is now, when we are doing the capacity building of local people, so the capacity building of line departments come in which we cannot do them right now. We cannot make the capacity of the line departments because that is government employee, even they're from previous government. This is one of the challenge. The second challenge is that whenever the required intervention is in place in all the activities that is required for safeguarding of the historical site is in place, then the issue of site management comes in for long run, for long terms, and this is the responsibility of the government that we say, okay, now this is the work, the intervention is completed, the site is restricted, that now you have to put 5 people to, when the visitors or tourists are coming, they should be briefed and they should be accompanied, explain to them don't scratch the painting or don't touch anything, and explain the history of that monuments, similarly like in other countries. So now the government has the capacity to hire 5 or 10 people plus the other required facilities, accommodations, and other logistical support to these, to maintain these sites professionally. And that is the time that if we have all these arrangements in place, now believe me, we will receive only thousands of people to Bamiyan, thousands of people to Jam Minaret, and to all other historical sites. So this is one of the issue that we have to find solution. Maybe this is not a problem forever. It depends upon the political situation, when there will be a recognition, or Taliban can change their policy in terms of removing ban on women education. I don't want to go to in politics, but it is relevant to our activities. So talking about Afghanistan, Mr. Maiwandi is here, is not an easy issue, because there are thousands of problems that it keep me or other speakers in confusion. How to start it and where to finish it. For example, if you look back to the 5 decades that I only remember 4 decades of that. Many regime change, many things happened in Afghanistan, and believe me, the protection of historical monuments was not an issue for many of the governments, because their priority was how to defeat their oppositions. For government forces, they were trying to defeat opposite Mujahideen parties. The Mujahideen parties were trying to demolish government offices. They were not taking care of anything. So their priority was different. Then during the civil war in Kabul, maybe our colleagues, they know better. They rehabilitated Murad Khani in Pulibaghi Mumi, in these areas. So Kabul was shattered. It was like ruins, like Jens city. There was like nothing left. So now there is somehow stability to some extent. There is no restriction on movement. UNESCO can reach to each corner of Afghanistan. This is a new development. We recently visited southern Zabul district, Kandahar district, Ghazni district. In northern part, we visited Samangan, Rui Doab district, which is like 5-6 hours drive from Samangan. Also some districts in Balkh. So there is no restrictions on movement. There is no like direct threats that does not allow us to go to and visit the sites. We will go to Jam Minaret very soon when I go back to Kabul. But still, this relationship with the government, direct relationship, and involving them in our activities. This is one of the challenging jobs, but there is always entry points there. Luckily, some of them are like quite supportive, like in Bamiyan. Recently, we went there with Mr. Fabio Colombo. Maybe some colleagues know him. In the director of culture, he assigned 2 people and gave him all the keys for caves that is locked for mural painting, and said whatever they need, just ask them. That was one of the positive signal that they didn't create any problem. They didn't ask for anything. We asked them open that cave. We could easily have access to all the sites. Even when we are going there, they send their people to to ask that local police station that these are our guests, let them go and visit Shahri Gulgula, Shahri Zohak, in Kakrak, in Fuladi. So there are some positive things, but still, Afghanistan is a challenging.
Thank you very much, Unim. Shoshana, so same question, maybe from the angle of intangible cultural heritage, which, I mean, never really gets addressed enough. Please.
Great. Wonderful. Do you think, is that working? Yeah. Wonderful. I do think it would be great for us to discuss the question, like, what is it like actually working, and compare notes? Because one of the things mentioned in the last project management session too, you know, we all work next to each other and we never know enough what each other's doing, even people who've worked alongside each other for many years. So this is a nice opportunity in a smaller session to do that. I think if we go back over the last year and a half, the starting point that Ajmal said, I totally agree with. And actually the statement by His Highness was incredibly powerful. And he was able to do that and to be clear about it in a way that I don't think anybody else was, and that was beautiful. And I was sort of speechless at that. And so, you know, we knew exactly where you all stood, and that was amazing. For us, we're like a British NGO. We're a non-governmental thing. We had to make the decision many months before. It's not like the Taliban rolls into Kabul and then you go, oh, what are we gonna do? So there are lots of terrible, you know, spreadsheets with traffic lights about where different security situations are moving to. But we had decided about 6 months earlier that when it was looking like the Taliban might take over, probably 4 months earlier, we were going to stay. So I think that commitment was important. One of the things I'd be interested in discussing is communication, because I basically took down our website because I wanted zero information in the public domain. And still we've put more up, but you know, I think you all have done a much better job saying what you're doing. I still don't know, I'm still like insanely careful about it. So I would love to discuss that, I think. Just to answer more tangibly, like what did it actually look like over the last year and a half after the middle of August? So for us, we reopened things in stages. We, you know, as Ajmal said, he did, you know, you keep everyone on staff, of course, but everyone's at home. I mean, that's the next day everyone was at home. And then the Taliban came around and it seemed like primary health was safe and uncontroversial for everyone. We run a clinic in Mauritania. So the first thing within a few days that we restarted was the clinic. So like doctors go in, start to see patients again. So it was primary health and then primary education. We have 3 primary schools, 2 in Bamiyan and 1 in Kabul. So we reopened those next. So then beginning to work on building sites and getting students and teachers back into the institute in higher education. Vocational education was then after that. I suppose the main word that I would use for the operating situation now is malleable. Incredibly malleable. Like, you know, the Taliban around the end of December issued some new edicts saying, no, we really meant women cannot be in a higher education and women cannot work for NGOs. Now, I'm not putting this online and I'm not talking to a journalist about it, but so the next day, the female teachers in our primary education stayed home because they were told they're not allowed to come and work for an NGO. But they're all back at work now. In Bamiyan and in Kabul, it's different situations. In Bamiyan, it was the Bamiyan Authority saying, get all your projects up and running. How long that took? It took weeks, a couple weeks. In Kabul, it was slightly slower, and that was about the Ministry of Education, and they explained to us how they wanted us to get started again. So they said, have the community write a letter saying they would like, we'd like our teachers back, please. So we did that. So that, malleable is the word that I would use for the current situation.
Yes, I think that what Ajmal has said and what our friend from the UNESCO has been saying, and Shoshana said, that is something that a message I try to pass to my authority, to tell them, yes, it's possible to work. And yes, we can work in good condition. And what we are trying to do also, I'm trying to do, is to say there is, I would say, and people understand clearly that there is a need, as example, for emergency help for people. And I think that cultural heritage is also from the same field. It's not exactly the same emergency, but it's an emergency. And it's also very important to make it clear. My main fear, we have still an agreement with the Afghan government, and for me, I would say we still have this mission, and we are going to go on with this mission. We are not going to give up in any way. But simply, we are trying to explaining, and that communication should be very important, is that we need not to wait. I think that what Ajmal is doing, what Shoshana is doing, is absolutely incredible. What UNESCO is doing is very good. But obviously, we need to do more. And my main fear is that probably people are going to realize what we are missing now when monuments of Afghanistan, main monument of Afghanistan, are going to collapse. If we have to wait until the collapse of the minaret of Jam to have really a real awareness of the needs, I think it will be a pity. And that's what we are fighting, and to try to say, there is a disaster which is looming, better to try to address the issue before to have to, I would say, to suffer this disaster, which will be our responsibility collectively. I would say that if something like this happens, I will consider it as, I would say, a collective blunder for everybody. And I would say that we are not in Afghanistan, but there is something very symbolic about the way DAFA is present in Afghanistan. In 1983, DAFA had to leave Afghanistan due, I would say, to the political situation. But we kept our library there. And when in 2001 we went back in Afghanistan, the library was there. And whoever had been running the country during this period, they respected our library. So when we took the decision to close our office, not totally, because part was with Ajmal, we decided to keep the library on, because I would say we had, I would say, good feedbacks from the Taliban authority, and I'm pretty sure that's a risk, but I'm pretty sure that the link of competence that we are establishing in keeping our library, and how symbolic is a library, is going, I would say, the way to say DAFA is always there.
Thank you very much, Philippe. Well, that was exactly my point, right? Is that we often do. We often do. So maybe a short word on that. Then I do want to play the video of Dr. Khalidi, who's not here but has a few words to say. And then after that, we'll get further into those questions, keeping in mind we have 15 minutes. But the discussion will go on tonight, hopefully. Yeah, please, Shoshana.
Oh, you want me to do it before the video? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, well,
yeah.
Except if you want to make a theme of it after that.
No. Okay, so we work with craft traditions across the country. The Institute is in Kabul. And of course, these other institutions also work with intangible cultural heritage. So we train in a 3-year accredited program, but it's accredited out of the UK now, City and Guilds. It is not accredited for women in Afghanistan, but it is for men, given that it's higher education. But we realized very quickly that if people weren't able to make a living from these traditions, that they would not continue. And so for us, working in intangible cultural heritage, mostly in craft traditions, we love poetry and food and musical instruments, but it's not as much our focus. We do, I would say, the entire chain, everything we can do. So we document traditions seriously, we train and transmit it to the next generation, we incubate businesses, we buy and sell as a charity, and export, we market and sell, we put on exhibitions. So cultural, it is, we are able to export from Afghanistan completely smoothly. I mean, there are large, yeah, it's fairly smooth. I would say it's fairly smooth. Large companies, Asprey is sourcing from Afghanistan, the Citizenry, a sort of artisanal company out in New York, the Connaught Hotel, 5-star hotels. these are big international companies, are happy to source from Afghanistan. The paperwork's fully in place. There are Office of Foreign Assets Control, U.S. Treasury licenses that explicitly exempt the export taxes that artisans have to pay to get the stuff out of the country. It all works. So I would say that, in some sense, the risk really is about the lack of connection from Afghanistan to the outside world, which we are trying to do in an economic sense and in a cultural sense, but the communications is punishing because we can't really talk about it. And that's harder than building work for us because a lot of the people doing this are women, and even if I cover faces, it's totally inappropriate for me to put an artisan, up in the public domain. It's not. So I struggle with how to do that, frankly.
Yeah, I think whether we realized it or not, or depending on how long it took us to realize it, the question of how we talk about Afghanistan right now, how we talk about what we do, about the people doing it, is massively problematic, but it's also key in trying to open, or bring more donors in the country or facilitate interactions, but there's so much that we don't control. So I think we can go back to this sort of questions after that. I do want to play the video of Dr. Khalili, who's ex-Potat Krata, but also ex-Deputy Minister of Information and Culture of Afghanistan. Please, thank you.
Dear friend, Mr. Valerie Freeland, Executive Director of ALIPH, Honorable ALIPH members, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me an immense honor and pleasure to share my words with the participants of ALIPH Forum in Abu Dhabi. I was very much looking forward to participate to this valuable gathering, but unfortunately, due to some unexpected circumstances, I couldn't get the opportunity to travel to Abu Dhabi. However, as a former Deputy Minister of Culture of Afghanistan, I am pleased and honored for having the occasion to deliver my message through this short video to the honorable participants of this important event. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank ALIPH for its significant contribution to the preservation of Afghanistan's cultural heritage since its foundation. The projects such as conservation of Shewaki Buddhist stupa, conservation of Kabul Balaisa, and safeguarding of Jam minarets are the great examples of this important contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, situated in the heart of Asia, on some of the most highly important stretches of the Silk Road, which connected China, India, and the Mediterranean world, Afghanistan is a country with an extraordinary rich history. From the Bronze Age through the Greco-Bactrian, Kushan, and Heptalic eras to the Islamic period, the region was influenced by the network of international trade routes and by its neighboring kingdoms. This complex history has given rise to one of the most important archaeological, artistic, and architectural cultural heritage all over the country. Since the outbreak of war in 1979, the major historical monuments, including artifacts and archaeological sites across the country, were threatened and damaged by a combination of fighting, looting, neglect, and iconoclasm. Many historical monuments suffered severe damage during the war, and several of these are in critical need of immediate conservation and rehabilitation measures to ensure their preservation for the future. I'd say that, unfortunately, by collapse of the Republic and the Taliban takeover, the present situation of Afghanistan's cultural heritage and archaeological sites can be qualified as a cultural disaster. In the aftermath of the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, concerns are growing not only for the already long-suffering population, particularly the women and girls who are denied of all their basic rights, but also, once again, for the country's rich heritage. If the pre-Islamic monuments are the most threatened, they are not the only ones. The Taliban have not undertaken a policy of heritage preservation in consultation of experts on this subject. As a result of suspension of the law on the preservation of cultural heritage by Taliban, collapse of the newly established system of cultural heritage preservation, fleeing of experts from the country because of security situation, lack of awareness regarding the value and importance of cultural heritage, both among people in Taliban and absence of related international organizations on the spot, the cultural heritage of Afghanistan are facing a real danger of looting and destruction. It is therefore time to reflect on possible efforts to contribute to the safeguarding of the cultural heritage of Afghanistan, and it is necessary to have an overview of both persistent and new threats to the cultural heritage of this country, focusing mainly on historical monuments, archaeological sites, and objects. So, to prevent the repeat of cultural tragedy of 2001, while by destruction of two Buddha statues of Bamiyan, the world lost one of the most valuable heritage of humanity, I'd like to take this opportunity to call upon all related international actors and organizations and experts of cultural heritage to pay particular attention to the preservation of Afghanistan's cultural heritage in this very critical situation. I once again thank ALIPH for this opportunity and wish you a very successful forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you for playing the video. Well, I think beyond all the discussion about what we're actually doing, we need to keep in mind that there are still some issues, and those are the issues that basically all the organizations represented here are trying to navigate on a daily basis to make things happen. Right? So I do want at some point to open some of the questions to the floor. Maybe what we could do sort of a last round to address what is next, right? So we've talked about the need for flexibility. We talked about the need to be very clear about our dedication to Afghanistan and its people. We talked about and beyond sort of politics, let's say. So what's next for cultural heritage in Afghanistan? I don't want to hear more money. I mean, obviously, like, you know, this comes with, any ideas, but I think what are the new ways that we can address cultural heritage? I think, you know, being flexible, being willing to maybe implement portions of projects instead of the totality of the projects, maybe listening more to partners on the ground. I mean, there has to be solutions both on the technical side of things. I mean, Philippe Marquis was talking about, emphasis on training. There are discussions about increasing use of remote satellite imagery, but also more conceptually and how we perceive our relationship with the institutions we work with.
Thanks a lot. I think that's a good way perhaps then to open up the floor to questions. We've talked about the programs we've had in Afghanistan. I don't think anyone has had ever a crystal ball to know what was going to happen in Afghanistan. I think we could talk about that for the past 200 years. I think people have always been surprised about what's happened in Afghanistan, certainly. I think the speed with which the Taliban took Kabul, I don't think anyone expected that. Let's be clear. I also think that the situation has evolved. The situation's changed. There is some of the usual. There is what we go back to, which was what we've always done. But I think at a general level, in terms of engagement of people, employment, creation of jobs, resources, distribution of resources through projects, I think that makes a lot of sense. But it's not business as usual. Let's be clear about that as well. You talked about ambiguity, uncertainty, and there is uncertainty, but I think in moments of uncertainty, we also realize that there are moments of opportunity, which means for the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, on projects like Misainak, which is a new project that we've engaged in, we've just started working in. I think there are serious issues around economic development, preservation, especially at this time of a kind of suppressed economy for Afghanistan. Development of its economy, development of its natural resources is going to be an essential component moving ahead. And in that context, the preservation of safeguarding its both natural and built heritage is going to be essential. How does one address that? It's a major issue. At a time when in many ways Afghanistan has been politically isolated, how do we as conservation experts deal with these issues? Because we are at the forefront. These issues are critical to the works that we've done in the past and the work that we will be doing from this point forward. I think for us, we also continue to demonstrate that it is possible to do very complex conservation projects in Afghanistan. We're not going to take it for granted that it's not possible until it becomes impossible. And it's not impossible at the moment. And I think projects like the Fifth Minaret in Herat, where we're trying to keep this 42-meter structure from collapsing, or projects like the Balai Sar, where we're in an attempt to create an archaeological park, one of the largest public spaces, dealing with ecology, dealing with landscape, dealing with the public sector. in support for operations of sites that we have restored, like under the Kabul Historic Gardens Trust, where we have these massive public gardens that are a tremendous resource for the public, to continue to operate these sites. So I think the situation will change, the environment will change. It probably, as we've always said with Afghanistan, the one thing that we've always said and agreed with is this general statement: it's going to get worse before it gets better. We've said that for 40 years now. Right? It's going to get worse before it gets better. But I think while we're waiting for things to get better or, God forbid, worse, there are opportunities, there is work that can be done that impact lives, continue to allow us to do our mandate and follow the things that we're meant to follow. I'll stop there, and then I'm sure there'll be more things for the question and answer.
In addition to this, yeah. Basically, I think we, as per our experience during the past 1.5 years, there are many entry points that we can think about it. For example, we are working now under TIF. This is stand for Transitional Engagement Framework, that allow UN agencies to work in Afghanistan, all United Nations agencies. So under this framework, we are delivering the humanitarian services to Afghan population, not the government. So whatever activities now we are doing is somehow linked to this framework, and that comes under this framework. Because if we are doing conservation, if we are doing any other intervention, of course we are employing local people. We are creating short-term job opportunity, which is the only source of income for, if I say 90% or 95% of the population. This is not an exaggeration. So if we focus on other some other activities like intangible cultural heritages, like the handicrafts, which is now recently in NGO was doing an assessment for UN Women agency. They were identifying the artisans still in Afghanistan, especially the ladies, the girls in Bamiyan. They are producing namad. It is like woolen carpet, felt. Yes, sorry for that. And also the embroidery in the other handicrafts. So definitely there is the ground is ready for that, with some limitations, that male should not communicate to them or should not be in one compound, doing the same job. So if there is a center established in Bamiyan, in center of Bamiyan, or in districts, and the ladies are gathered in one particular house, maybe the house of the community elder or the malik. So there are many entry points like that we can only involve ladies or create ladies related activities that they can have job employment, they can have like run their own small business. Recently I heard, maybe Mr. Maiwandi also knows about it, in Mazar city, the government is trying to establish only ladies market, starting from shopkeepers, suppliers, customers. All of them should be women and girls. No man should go to that site. And they will produce the handicrafts and other women stuff or women-related items, like for makeup things, clothes, shoes, whatever they need. Similarly, in Kabul, the day before yesterday, there was a workshop of ladies who were involved in handicrafts. And that was, I think, organized by government. So these are the indications that there are entry points that if we think about it, and we take care of some small limitations, like she better knows to put like mask or wear hijab. So we can have some activities to deliver the minimum support to women who are involved in cultural or in heritage activities. Thank you. male should keep away from that.
Just in terms of way forward stuff, I think we probably all agree that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think that gets more difficult as it becomes harder for women to participate in different things. One thing I thought, and you all may hate me for this, but I wonder, when things changed, we all kind of went, and communication got really low. I think it might be useful for those of us working in Afghanistan now to reinstitute a regular call. You can all throw things at me now, but I actually think it might not be a bad idea. I mean, I remember we used to have like the old city commission, but at least it forced people to get together every once in a while, even when the meetings were frequently canceled, and even if it's like a junior member of staff. But I think it would be worth reintroducing a common conversation, because there are so few cultural organizations working in Afghanistan. Like, at least the four of us or our staff should talk together more often than we do. I also think there's a conversation to be had about heritage education and the professional scene, like, young architects and engineers. There aren't a lot of jobs out there, obviously, and there are still degree programs for architecture and engineering, and they are beginning, it would be interesting to talk about what our various organizations offer or would like to offer in terms of professional development, particularly in traditional building or traditional craft, and not overlapping and all that sort of thing. But there's compared to 2 years ago, there is a significant lack of professional opportunities in the cultural sector. So what would we like to do about that?
Yeah, obviously, I would say we can easily identify the threats on the cultural heritage. And the other point is how to address it. And the problem is that we are saying that people of UNESCO know it very well. I would say the expertise is no more in the country. So the main problem is capacity building. And I think that, so we are trying to do something from our part, and we try to keep people like Khalil Moussadegh, which is on at his PhD this year in Paris. We have to keep them in the loop. But then after, I think that we can try to organize also workshop for, I would say, capacity building. That's an issue we have been discussing with Ajmal. And I think that I take the opportunity that we are in Abu Dhabi to say that Abu Dhabi could be, as example, a good place to organize, I would say, technical workshop for professional. And I think that there is enough university, I think a New York University in Abu Dhabi, Sorbonne University, but there is also the Louvre Museum, and I want to thank my friend François Chevrolier, who is here, who could be, I would say, a good place for training of young conservationists and so on. So this is the kind of initiative that we can push, and I would say, as DAFA, we can help on it. As I would say, we can do it. That's a discussion we had to organize in other neighboring countries, such as Iran, Pakistan, and so on, in order to, I would say, to keep and to be ready for the right moment when the sky will be brighter, and to have, I would say, the capacity to respond, and even in case of emergency, to have the people who are, I would say, duly trained to I would say, to cope with this task.
It's 6 p.m., but I do want to see there's a few questions on the floor. Feel free.
I do have a question. This is conflictive. I mean, you're talking about the lack of jobs for young professionals, and then we're seeing people going out of the country, the cultural heritage people going out of the country. It sounds like, that created a lot of positions and vacancies. So how does this work?
Is pointing the right question. I would say that because the task is enormous, we have to go against a trend which is not favorable for us. And but if we don't do anything, and if we don't try to address it, the things are going to be worse. Of course, I would say we can understand that many people, they want to go for a better life in, I would say, a hypothetical better country, And so there is this trend of the people to go out. And that's a real challenge, is to say, okay, we can give you, I would say, element to have, I would say, hope in your future, and then to build on it. That's I would say that's a major challenge, of course. But I think that all of us, we are aware of it, and I would say all of us, we are committed to try to go for the better and not for the worse.
Maybe just quickly, in terms of the construction industry, was one of the major economic growth areas in Afghanistan. So that was previously when you had international aid, donor aid, development aid, and when you had also our organizations with relatively more funding and more projects than what we had today. At the moment, with the expertise that has gone out of Afghanistan, new generations of young Afghans coming out, those opportunities simply don't exist. But for us, because our work does continue, we do have significant projects. We still work with universities. We still work with bringing, providing training for young architects and engineers, for that matter, in university, and also archaeologists now on our sites, and then grooming them and giving them apprenticeships so that they can develop and take the place. I mean, it's, the situation now doesn't exactly remind me of 2002, but perhaps 2004 and 2005, when we first started. Capacities didn't exist. We created capacities. We helped institutions build capacity. We provided training. We engaged people on our projects. We build the capacity that we've just lost. And if one takes a term from the sporting world, it's the long game. In Afghanistan, we're starting again. We're doing it again from scratch somehow. And not in every instance, of course. We've got senior committed professionals like Dr. Bastien, who's our project manager on several of our projects, who remain. And by having that, we continue to build capacity. So opportunity through building capacities is critical.
Another question, maybe?
Just a comment. I think two things. The first one is the Taliban have changed their attitude. It was mentioned in the video, the Buddhas of Bamiyan. I think this is, let's forget about this episode. We are talking about a new generation. And the fact is that the government is requesting international aid to put in value their cultural heritage. For example, the current government has submitted to UNESCO a request for the Baghe Babours to be included in the World Heritage List, which, by the way, UNESCO has used tortuous ways to divert in the great embarrassment of the Secretariat. Okay, that's the first thing. So we are facing a new attitude of the government. We are being requested, it's not a secret, and you know it very well, that we've been requested to bring our technical expertise to deal with the Messagnac site and reconcile this need to exploit a very important natural resources that will improve the GNP of the country and to salvage whatever is possible of that site. It's a difficult compromise, we haven't taken it. Any government could take in this compromise. The Egyptian government took the decision to flood the Nubian region, etc., etc. We are not going to discuss that. So, but they are also aware that cultural heritage is an economic driver. Let me give you a very precise example. We have, and my calculation is that we have brought, AKTC has brought to Afghanistan exactly $96 million for conservation projects. 56% of that money was not our own money, was money provided by European governments, American foundations. So the cultural heritage mobilizes money that helps to build jobs. And now our problem is not the current government. My problem, excuse me if there are Germans in this room, is that the German government has withdrawn from a very important project in the center of Kabul abruptly and without reasoning, and run by the diktat, this is a good word, the diktat of the diktat of the Department of Internal Audit of KfW, which is, as you know, the national bank, and not by decision of the federal government in Berlin. But our problem is then looking for the future is how are we going to make the Western countries come back to Afghanistan? And we, in all realms, and not only the Western countries, and the Asian countries are in the countries in the region. India has been a great supporter of Afghanistan. China is a great supporter of Afghanistan today, one of the few ones. How are we going to bring these countries back to Afghanistan and in the realm we are talking about, in understanding the importance of cultural heritage, not only as an economic value, but also as an identity value and a witness of history that future generations will need.
I mean, we're going to stay here until we get kicked out, if that's fine.
Right. We're going to drag us kicking and screaming out. I think this is the central point, and this is why I'm so concerned with communication. I, too, let's be clear. When you read in the New York Times that, oh, it's the old situation again, it's a black hole, there's nothing going on, no woman ever leaves their house, cultural heritage is under threat. We say these things, people say these things to create urgency, fine. But the reality is we are all working in cultural heritage and our government counterparts are largely supportive and they see what you're saying, right? So the question is, how do we bring people back to Afghanistan? Because it is a communications issue, because all they're getting is people who are willing to speak on the news to say it's a disaster and by definition you can't work there and there is nothing to be done, when that is not the case. So I really do want to figure out what it is that is safe for us to talk about. I know that I'm not going to start talking about women in education. That's not what I'm asking about. However, to be clear, female-owned businesses, craft businesses, are a zero issue. Zero issue. Working not just in their homes, working in buildings. If it's a female-only space and the Taliban has been around, it's okay. Not a problem. I'm not sure that I can't. I mean, there are jewelry lines advertised on websites that are made in Afghanistan. I'm not going to put a picture of a woman there, but we can talk about that. But I wonder, given that cultural heritage is something the Taliban is happy to, has said and requested funds on, I wonder if we don't want to, I've never done this before. I'm not big on making statements, but I wonder if we want to try to make a point to foreign governments that this is something that the Taliban government has requested and that we, as organizations working, are happy to do, and it's happening. That somehow we have to, because otherwise I don't know how they are going to come back. I feel a bit like that. I feel a bit cowardly at the moment from not speaking out more widely, but I know why.
No, I don't. I think the governments are aware of it. I mean, I think UNESCO has heavily communicated about, well, sorry, not completely publicly actually, directions, right?
Perhaps it's in the halls of power in the UK or maybe in Germany or elsewhere in the US. But I think there's also a place to speak out in Afghanistan. I think that's an important one. We talked before about opportunities for women, yes, and perhaps designing and crafts and things like this, but we've also got engineers in our office. We've also got archaeologists. We've also got women who have aspirations as well, in medicine and other things. And that's an important aspect. And I think we can advocate for that. We have to establish that we don't become part of a system which oppresses beyond the level that it has already. And I think we do that by establishing the fact that gender equality, women's rights, women's roles in a society like Afghanistan is expansive, in fact. And there's no limitation to that as professionals, as engineers, as doctors, as archaeologists. And I think that's certainly what we aim to do. And that's important as well. Considering also that Afghanistan is a tribal, rural, agrarian society with many, many places where education doesn't reach all Afghans, not only women or men. And perhaps there are different roles, and that's what our vocational training programs do, is trying to find aspects of a local crafts and production which can address the whole range of aspiration and the whole range of capacity in education. I think that becomes important as well. I think essential is the window of opportunity that we've got today. When we talk about the Taliban allowing us to work, when we talk about the Taliban allowing us to work on pre-Islamic sites, in fact, encouraging us to work on pre-Islamic sites, I don't think it's a given that that's going to continue. I think it continues when there's engagement. I think there's continues when there's results. I think it continues when there's impacts. And I think it stops at some point. I mean, reality is, this is what we've seen with other things. So that's why it's critical to engage now. That's why it's critical to move forward now, to show that engagement from the cultural sector, from organizations, from the rest of the world actually results in impacts on the ground. That's demonstrative, that's educational, that's advocacy, that's what changes mindsets.
Thank you. So we have, and this is going to be the last question, and then maybe, we'll see.
I'll be quick. My name is Charlotte Marriott. I'm here from the UK government, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for this, because it has been a breath of fresh air. When I present into the FCDO on the work of the cultural heritage in Afghanistan, I often don't have very much to say, and it's with disappointment that I don't put something on the agenda. I'm going to have so much more to put on the agenda now. And the point that you've made, and I've spoken to Shoshana about this already today, about the kind of difficulty with regards to communication. I would never want anyone to be put in danger at the expense of developing your project. So finding that balance is going to be a challenge. But I really invite you to have those conversations with policy officials, because just for one example, if I may, the International Cultural Heritage Protection Fund program includes the CPF. The CPF wasn't able to fund major projects at the advice of the FCDO. But what the British Council has done is two programs. One, I'm with my colleague Nadia today with the translation of first aid guidance into Pashto, but also a feasibility study that will help just one particular government to find out what can be done. And I just wanted to say, if there is any potential collaboration, both with ALIPH as well, that we can start to sort of kind of grade the options that will bring in that reintegration again from government. So thank you so much. This is going to be a very helpful thing to report back. So yeah, that was it really.
Thank you very much. Alexandra, yeah.
Can just very quickly, and I think this was also very, very good, because we had lots of conversations with the colleagues from the Cultural Protection Fund, and actually the project from Nadia is a nice way where we actually both said yes, let's go ahead. And I think the moment two people say let's go, no, two institutions say let's move ahead, I mean, it creates a kind of additional movement, let's say.
No, for sure. Thank you very much. Yes, Nadia, sorry. Please. Apologies.
I just want to quickly say that I think the criminal codes of many Western governments do not allow the direct flow of funds into Afghanistan. And so the two projects that I got from ALIPH and British Council ensure that I do not spend any of the money that I receive inside Afghanistan. And so there's a limited level of advocacy going on, at least in Canada, that I know of, to lift some of the criminal code restrictions on sending funds for humanitarian aid into Afghanistan. I guess it will be helpful if organizations such as the four represented here on cultural heritage start some kind of advocacy from inside Afghanistan also, to see if some of these restrictions could be lifted. I think if that happens, a lot of donors would be interested to go back to Afghanistan.
Yes. Melissa, there's a mic over there.
I'll make it. I'll get straight to the point. I mean, as a journalist who's tried to cover Afghanistan, and Ajmal, you've been incredible in helping me. Publications don't want stories that are nuanced. They don't want stories that say, the Taliban is trying to be better, but they're still the Taliban. I mean, that. I've tried to sell that story, And so I think the problem is on so many levels with communication. And I totally appreciate how it is a minefield in so many ways.
Are getting kicked out finally, but I'd like to thank you all very much. I mean, and I want to say that some of the things we've learned here. Thank you to the speakers as well. Everyone here, from donor to, I don't know, member in civil society or experts, I think has a role to play in making things happen in Afghanistan again. So thank you very much for your commitment, for your presence, and looking forward to talking to you all tonight. Thank you.